Imagine a ship ghosting across the vast Atlantic, every sail perfectly set, its cargo undisturbed, a hot meal still on the galley table, yet not a living soul was anywhere to be found. This was the Mary Celeste, discovered on December 4, 1872, adrift hundreds of miles from the Azores, a vessel sailing itself, a perfect phantom. Its crew vanished into the cold, indifferent sea without a trace. It was a scene of eerie, unsettling perfection, where everything was in order, save for the very presence of humanity itself. The discovery itself was an act of serendipity, or perhaps a cruel twist of fate. The British brigantine Dei Gratia, under the command of Captain David Morehouse, was making its way from New York to Gibraltar, carrying a cargo of petroleum. Morehouse was an experienced seaman, a man of routine and sharp eyes. It was one of his crew who first spotted the distant sail, a speck on the horizon, behaving erratically. At first glance, it appeared to be a ship struggling, perhaps damaged, its sails flapping awkwardly in the wind. But as the Dei Gratia drew closer, an unsettling truth began to emerge. The ship wasn't struggling, it was simply drifting. Its sails were indeed partially unfurled, some damaged, but not in a way that suggested a major storm. The main jib and foretopmast staysail were gone, and the main gaff sail was torn, but critically, the standing rigging was sound. No distress signals flew from its masts, no frantic shouts answered their hails. As Captain Morehouse and his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, approached, a silence descended, heavy and absolute, a silence that felt profoundly wrong. This ship was not merely abandoned, it was empty, a hollow shell of human endeavor. DeVoe, a man of nerve and keen observation, was the first to board the spectral vessel. He described the moment as stepping into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The Mary Celeste was listing slightly, water sloshing in its hold, but not enough to be alarming. He descended into the cabins, his boots echoing in the sudden stillness. He found the captain's cabin surprisingly tidy, though water had seeped in. The ship's chronometer, its sextant, and the navigation instruments were gone. But most chillingly, in the galley, a half-eaten breakfast was still on the table, plates and mugs seemingly awaiting their phantom diners. It was as if time itself had paused, then simply decided to skip ahead, leaving this tableau behind. The eerie perfection of this scene, a ship sailing itself with breakfast still warm, would forever etch the Mary Celeste into the annals of the unexplained. No one ever found the crew. The Mary Celeste wasn't some derelict, forgotten hulk. She was a robust brigantine built in Nova Scotia in 1861, originally named Amazon. She had a respectable, if sometimes troubled, career. Her captain, Benjamin Briggs, was a man of integrity and deep faith, known for his prudence and skill. He was not one to panic, nor to make rash decisions. He'd captained several ships before, always with success. On this ill-fated voyage, he wasn't alone. His wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, were with him, along with a crew of 7 experienced sailors. 10 souls in total, setting out from New York, bound for Genoa, Italy, with a cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. A family, a crew, a routine journey. What force could have swept them away so utterly and cleanly? The initial shock of the discovery quickly gave way to a chilling realization. This wasn't a shipwreck in the traditional sense. There was no wreckage scattered for miles, no bodies washed ashore, no cries for help carried on the wind. The ship's logbook, found in the mate's cabin, chronicled the voyage up until November 25th, 10 days before her discovery. The last entry noted their position northwest of the Azores. There was no mention of storms, no hint of trouble. It simply stopped. The crew had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a perfectly good ship, a hot meal, and a profound, aching silence. The mystery began not with a bang, but with the quiet, unsettling absence of one. What happens inside a human mind when faced with such an impossible void? When confronted with a situation that defies every logical explanation? The men of the Dei Gratia, having found no one, eventually decided to tow the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. This was a monumental task, a two-man crew struggling to control two ships across stormy seas. It took them days, battling rough weather, almost losing the derelict ship several times. But they persevered, driven by the hope of salvage and perhaps by a creeping sense of obligation to the ghost ship itself. They felt the weight of the unsolved mystery, even as they sailed alongside it. Upon reaching Gibraltar, the story exploded. Salvage rights were a serious business, and suspicions immediately arose. The Vice Admiralty Court convened, and a formal inquiry began. The atmosphere was charged with accusations. Was Captain Morehouse of the Dei Gratia involved in some elaborate insurance fraud, abandoning the Mary Celeste himself to claim salvage? Or was it a mutiny? Perhaps the crew, fueled by the ship's alcoholic cargo, had turned on Captain Briggs? The court examined every piece of evidence, every detail. They noted the clean cuts on the ropes of the main gaff, suggesting a deliberate action rather than a storm. They questioned the missing chronometer and sextant. They scrutinized the missing lifeboat, discovered to be a small yawl, likely towed behind the ship and then cut loose. The prosecution, led by Attorney General Frederick Solly Flood, was particularly aggressive. He believed foul play was at hand, suggesting the Mary Celeste had been abandoned deliberately, possibly as part of a scheme, or that murder had occurred. The ship's second logbook, a slate log usually kept in the binnacle for easy reference, was missing, which seemed suspicious. The court investigated every crevice of the ship, looking for bloodstains, signs of struggle, but they found nothing. No blood, no weapons, no signs of a fight. Just water in the hold, some damaged sails, and the pervasive, disquieting sense of absence. It was a mystery that defied easy answers, one that would baffle experts and capture imaginations for more than a century. This particular mystery of the Mary Celeste has truly stood the test of time, proving itself an enduring enigma, unlike many others which eventually yield their secrets. The theory of piracy was quickly dismissed. Piracy usually involves plunder and violence, yet the Mary Celeste's cargo, valuable industrial alcohol, was untouched. Personal valuables, including Captain Briggs' sword, were still in his cabin. If pirates had boarded the vessel, why leave everything of worth? Mutiny also seemed unlikely. Captain Briggs was respected. His crew seemed content. And if a mutiny had occurred, why would the mutineers then abandon a perfectly sound vessel and simply vanish without a trace? The idea of a sea monster, a colossal squid or kraken, seizing the crew, while a favorite of sensationalist tales, found no evidence whatsoever. No massive tentacles had crushed the ship's mast. No colossal teeth marks scored the hull. The ship was intact. The disappearance had to be something far more subtle, yet equally terrifying. So, if not pirates, mutineers, or monsters, what then? The inquiry ultimately found no evidence of foul play and awarded Captain Morehouse a modest salvage fee, far less than what he might have received if the abandonment had been deemed a deliberate act of fraud. But the mystery remained. The legal proceedings closed, yet the questions lingered, echoing in the halls of maritime history. What could cause a competent captain, with his family and crew, to abandon a ship that, despite a little water in the hold and some damaged sails, was otherwise perfectly seaworthy?
One theory, perhaps the most plausible, involves a combination of environmental factors and human panic. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. While considered relatively safe, these barrels were made of red oak, a porous wood. It was known that alcohol fumes could leak through such barrels, especially during rough seas, and accumulate in the ship's hold. What if, a few days before the discovery, the crew detected strong, acrid fumes emanating from the cargo? Perhaps they heard strange gurgling sounds, or even a muffled explosion, perhaps from a loose barrel expanding in the heat. Imagine the scene. Captain Briggs, a responsible man, hears the unsettling sounds. He knows the volatile nature of the cargo. He orders the main hatch open to investigate, and a cloud of potent, invisible vapor rushes out. In that moment, fear, primal and overwhelming, might have seized the crew. They could have genuinely believed the ship was about to explode, that the alcohol fumes had built up to a catastrophic level. This wasn't some fantasy monster. This was a very real, very present danger that could rip the ship apart in an instant. It is in these moments of extreme duress that even the most rational individuals can make desperate decisions. The theory suggests Briggs, fearing imminent explosion, ordered everyone into the ship's yawl, a small boat usually towed behind. He would have attached a line from the yawl to the ship, intending to ride out the perceived danger at a safe distance, then return once the fumes dispersed or the threat passed. This would explain the missing lifeboat and why the ship's navigation instruments were taken, basic survival protocol for a temporary abandonment. The logbook would have ceased then as their attention turned to survival. But what if something went terribly wrong during this temporary abandonment? A sudden squall, a rogue wave, a line snapping unexpectedly. The North Atlantic is a capricious mistress, her mood shifting with brutal speed. One moment, the ship is being towed. The next, a sudden lurch, a violent pitch, and the line breaks. The Mary Celeste, sails still partially set, would have lurched forward, slowly but inexorably pulling away from the tiny yawl and its terrified occupants. Picture their horror, watching their vessel, their only hope of survival, drift away, perfectly fine, leaving them marooned on the vast, unforgiving ocean. No one could live to tell that story. Could it have been something more exotic? Some historians have speculated about a seaquake, an underwater earthquake that could have sent tremors through the hull, dislodging barrels and creating geysers of water mixed with alcohol fumes. Or a waterspout, a terrifying vortex of water and wind, could have struck the ship, disorienting the crew, sweeping some overboard, and convincing others that the ship was doomed. But again, for these events to leave no tangible damage, no signs of a violent struggle, yet utterly clear the ship of its human occupants, it feels incomplete. The ship itself was largely undamaged, its structure sound. The human element remains central. It's not just what happened, but why they chose to abandon. Loss aversion plays a powerful role in our psychology. The perceived threat of an explosion, even if it was a misjudgment, would have been a direct and immediate risk to life, far outweighing the loss of the ship itself. Captain Briggs, responsible for his family and crew, would have prioritized their safety above all else. His decision, perhaps tragically flawed, would have been born of that profound sense of responsibility. And who can truly blame him, standing on the deck of a ship that felt like a ticking time bomb? This story, this profound absence, has resonated throughout our culture. The Mary Celeste became the quintessential ghost ship, the archetype for countless tales of maritime horror and the inexplicable. Her legend has been woven into literature, film, and even into folklore, serving as a chilling reminder of the sea's indifference and the fragile boundary between presence and absence. The idea of a fully provisioned vessel, adrift and silent, inspired generations of storytellers, often focusing on the deep psychological horror of vanishing without a trace. It tapped into a primal fear. What if the world simply forgets you, leaves you behind, perfect and empty? This is a deep dive into the archives, an unraveling of something truly bizarre. What do you think happened to them? What force, what tragic misjudgment could have led to such a complete and utter disappearance? Share your theories in the comments below. The Mary Celeste's final, lingering irony is that she was not sunk, not ravaged by a storm, not broken on unforgiving rocks. She was found in relative calm, perfectly sound, a testament to her robust construction, yet completely devoid of life. It's the kind of scenario that fuels nightmares, a perfectly normal setting, suddenly utterly wrong. The details, the half-eaten meal, the quiet cabins, the missing lifeboat, they all whisper of a sudden, desperate decision, a moment of profound terror that forced 10 people to abandon safety for the vast, unknown ocean. The ship itself continued its life, under new owners, eventually meeting its demise 12 years later, deliberately scuttled off the coast of Haiti in an insurance fraud scheme, a far less mysterious, though equally ignoble end. But it is her brief, perfect, terrifying interlude as a ghost ship that endures. The original mystery, the one that still hangs heavy in the air, concerns those 10 souls. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the 7 crewmen. Where did they go? What became of them? There are no answers, only theories, ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. Each one tries to fill that void, that uncomfortable silence left behind. The truth, if it ever surfaces, would likely be far more mundane than a kraken, yet perhaps no less heartbreaking. A momentary lapse, a terrible miscalculation, a sudden turn of weather, all conspiring to pluck 10 lives from the face of the earth, leaving behind only an empty vessel, still sailing, still perfectly provisioned. E é precisamente essa simplicidade brutal da tragédia humana que nos atrai, que nos obriga a espreitar para o abismo do que poderia ter acontecido. A mais convincente das explicações, e talvez a mais assustadora por sua plausibilidade, gira em torno da carga fantasma que o Mary Celeste transportava. 1.701 barris de álcool desnaturado, uma substância altamente volátil e inflamável. Imagine o cenário, o navio serpenteando pelas águas atlânticas, o sol a pico, e, em algum compartimento escuro do porão, um ou talvez alguns desses barris começam a vazar. Não um vazamento dramático que inundaria o convés, mas um gotejamento insidioso, lento, liberando vapores invisíveis e pesados que se acumulam no ar sem que ninguém a princípio perceba. Talvez um pungente odor etílico que, em mar aberto, poderia ser confundido com o ambiente do navio, ou ignorado em meio aos cheiros salgados do mar e à rotina da embarcação. O capitão Benjamin Briggs era um homem de notável prudência. Sua família, a esposa Sarah e a filha pequena Sophia, estava a bordo. Sua prioridade, acima de tudo, era a segurança de todos. Se ele ou qualquer um da tripulação tivessem detectado uma concentração perigosa desses vapores, a reação imediata, quase instintiva, seria o pânico. Vapores de álcool em um espaço confinado são uma bomba-relógio invisível. Uma única faísca, uma chama acidental de um lampião, um curto-circuito na rudimentar iluminação do porão e o navio inteiro poderia ser engolido por uma explosão devastadora sem aviso prévio. Nesse contexto de terror silencioso, a decisão mais lógica, embora desesperada, seria evacuar, mas não um abandono permanente, como se o navio estivesse condenado. Não, um abandono temporário, com a intenção clara de retornar assim que o perigo passasse, assim que os ventos limpassem o ar do porão e a ameaça de combustão se dissipasse. É por isso que o bote salva-vidas principal foi levado, carregado com instrumentos de navegação essenciais como o sextante e o cronômetro, e provavelmente com água e alguns mantimentos. A tripulação, o capitão, sua esposa e filha, todos a bordo do pequeno bote, provavelmente amarrados ao Mary Celeste por uma corda forte, afastando-se o suficiente para estarem seguros, mas perto o bastante para observar e esperar a tragédia não acontecer. Aqui, o destino, em sua indiferença cósmica, tece o seu fio mais cruel. O que se seguiria não seria o retorno seguro. Poderia ter sido uma rajada de vento inesperada, um redemoinho repentino, uma onda maior que o normal ou simplesmente a falha da corda, talvez já corroída pela água salgada ou pela tensão de manter 2 vasos conectados no mar. Um estalo seco, um rompimento, e de repente o Mary Celeste, leve e livre de seu fardo humano, continuaria sua jornada, impulsionado pelas correntes e pelos ventos, um navio fantasma sem saber que era um. E o pequeno bote salva-vidas com seus 10 ocupantes seria lançado à deriva no vasto e impiedoso Atlântico. A imagem aterroriza, o navio-mãe, a salvação e o lar de todos eles, diminuindo no horizonte enquanto a esperança se desfaz em desespero a cada ondulação. Sem bússola no pequeno bote, sem a capacidade de velejar contra a corrente, a busca por terra firme seria uma agonia prolongada, uma luta vã contra um adversário implacável. Os dias passariam, a água potável diminuiria, o sol castigaria impiedosamente. A morte, lenta e inevitável, aguardaria por eles, enquanto seu antigo lar, o Mary Celeste, vagava sem rumo, intocado e misterioso, carregando consigo os segredos de uma tragédia não testemunhada. Esta hipótese explica a perfeição quase assustadora com que o navio foi encontrado, os instrumentos de navegação levados, a falta de sinais de luta, a carga intacta, o café da manhã meio comido, tudo apontando para uma saída abrupta e planejada, embora temporária. Não houve piratas, pois nada de valor foi roubado do navio. Não houve motim, pois o capitão Briggs era conhecido por sua liderança justa e a tripulação por sua lealdade. Nem monstros marinhos, nem portais dimensionais, apenas o medo primário de uma explosão iminente, seguido pela ironia cruel de um rompimento que selou um destino. Esta teoria nos confronta com uma das verdades mais incômodas sobre a vida humana, nossa vulnerabilidade diante da natureza e, mais ainda, diante de nossas próprias decisões sob pressão. Quantas vezes na história um momento de pânico coletivo levou a catástrofes que, em retrospectiva, poderiam ter sido evitadas? A mente humana, sob o domínio do medo, pode ser um terreno traiçoeiro. A percepção do perigo, real ou superestimada, pode forçar escolhas irreversíveis. Imagine a tensão a bordo, a decisão que o capitão Briggs teve que tomar em questão de minutos, com o coração apertado pela visão de sua filha. Ele estava tentando salvar a todos. Outras teorias menos convincentes surgiram e desapareceram ao longo dos anos, tentando preencher essa lacuna. Alguns sugeriram um maremoto repentino, uma onda anômala que teria varrido a tripulação do Convex, mas deixado o navio ileso, uma ideia romanticamente dramática, mas que não explica o desaparecimento do bote salva-vidas e dos instrumentos. Outros falaram em um redemoinho gigante, ou até mesmo em fenômenos paranormais, a influência de forças invisíveis que teriam puxado as pessoas para fora do navio. Tais ideias, por mais fascinantes que sejam para a imaginação popular, raramente resistem ao escrutínio dos fatos e da física marítima. O Mary Celeste não era um ponto de entrada para outra dimensão, era um navio de madeira, ferro e velas, governado pelas leis do nosso mundo.
No fim das contas, o mistério do Mary Celeste não é sobre um monstro marinho ou uma conspiração intergaláctica. É sobre a fragilidade humana. É sobre a linha tênue entre a segurança percebida e o perigo real. É sobre a força da sugestão e a rapidez com que a esperança pode se transformar em desespero. O que nos resta não é uma revelação dramática, mas o eco de um grito que nunca foi ouvido, a imagem fantasma de um bote à deriva no oceano e um navio silencioso que carregou consigo os segredos de uma tragédia que, talvez, nunca teve testemunhas. Se você já se viu diante de uma escolha impossível, onde a linha entre o certo e o errado se dissolve no medo, comente abaixo qual dessas teorias, ou mesmo qual outra que você conhece, faz mais sentido para você. O que você acha que realmente aconteceu naqueles momentos críticos a bordo do Mary Celeste? A ausência de respostas concretas, a falta de qualquer vestígio dos 10 tripulantes, eleva a história do Mary Celeste de um mero incidente marítimo a um mito persistente. É um lembrete vívido de que nem todos os arquivos são abertos, nem todas as perguntas são respondidas. Às vezes, o maior horror reside naquilo que não sabemos, naquilo que nossa imaginação é forçada a preencher. E é essa lacuna, esse silêncio ensurdecedor que continua a nos assombrar, a nos fazer questionar o quão seguros estamos realmente a cada vez que olhamos para a vastidão azul do oceano. Se você é um daqueles que sente uma atração irresistível por esses mistérios insondáveis e por histórias que desafiam a lógica, junte-se a nós nesta jornada. Inscreva-se no The Unseen Archive para desvendar mais segredos que o tempo e o esquecimento tentaram apagar.
A história do Mary Celeste é um espelho. Ela reflete nossas próprias ansiedades sobre o desconhecido, nossa busca por ordem em um mundo caótico e nossa relutância em aceitar que, às vezes, a vida simplesmente se desdobra em caminhos cruéis e inexplicáveis. E assim, o navio fantasma continua a navegar em nossa mente, um enigma flutuante, um monumento à efemeridade da existência humana diante da imensidão da natureza. Ele não grita seus segredos, ele os sussurra através dos séculos, e somos nós, os curiosos e os perplexos, que tentamos decifrar seus murmúrios. The Mary Celeste is a story that refuses to be resolved. It's a testament to the power of the unknown, an enduring question mark etched onto the map of the ocean. It reminds us that even with all our technology and understanding, there are still corners of this world and moments in history that simply defy explanation. Some archives, it seems, prefer to hold their secrets forever. If you've ever felt that chilling uncertainty, that unsettling feeling of things just not adding up, consider subscribing to the Unseen Archive. We delve into these forgotten nightmares and strange realities every week. And so, the Mary Celeste sails on, not just in the cold waters of the Atlantic, but in the collective imagination, a silent, beautiful, terrifying monument to the inexplicable. Her story is not just about a missing crew. It's about the human desire to understand, to rationalize, to impose order on a world that sometimes, just sometimes, offers nothing but silence and an open, empty deck. Her legend, much like her final journey before discovery, remains adrift, perfectly preserved, yet utterly beyond our grasp. If you want to keep exploring these deep, unsettling corners of history, leave a like on this video. It tells us these are the stories you crave.